do you think of the hillside development by Mr. Maki? And how did you make the affinity?
So the hillside terrace development by Fumihiko Maki was a very important piece of architecture developed from the 60s through the 70s. And we had to pay, we paid a lot of respect to that in many ways. And you could see our project really, in some ways, as an extension of that, the way that the public space is split and permeates through our project too. There's lots of public space within Hillside Terrace, and the way that blends into the town or the townscape is really important.
I remember still when we first arrived in the late 80s, and I think the latest phase of Hillside Terrace was just completed by Fumihiko Maki, and all excited as young architects we went to go and see it. And so of course we felt a lot of pressure when we did DAIKANYAMA T-site to live up to the expectations of the area. So,
I think that's what we thought a lot of the time.
Yeah.
What would Maki Sensei think if we designed this? But Hillside Terrace is very important because that's where we met Hisa. So
right, oh yes.
Then how about the client? I mean, how did you realize the concept of the culture convenience club beyond
So I think
by means of architecture design?
So our architecture for T-site was really driven by the client and his desire for the project to be iconically branded, I think, and something that will become an international icon. But that's very difficult to do in Daikanyama because of the embassies, because of Fumihiko Maki's Hillside Terrace, and so we had to be quite delicate. And so
delicate as in the sense no big brash signage. So the building had to speak for itself, and the way that Culture Convenience Club client wanted this project to be approached was like as a total package, where it's not just the architecture, but where the interior and the contents would kind of and the service, that's right, would gel together.
But the architectural concept really came from the T-point card. You see the T, the Tsutaya T, everywhere across Japan. 70% of the population in Tokyo have a T-point card. It's really ubiquitous. And so there was that image that how could we get that into the project? And so the buildings become huge T's. Not many people can see that actually. They actually see the smaller T's, but each building is a big T, and that was something which we felt represented the client and his, the Tsutaya brand's power. We wanted to kind of reflect that, but it had to be done in a very delicate way, and I think we've achieved that quite well. Yeah, there's a twist, there's a sort of a smile put on your face when you realize each building is a great big T.
Especially when you sit across the other side of the road at Cafe Asso, and you look across drinking your, which the client did a lot, and he looks across and he sees these three big T's. But of course there are also trees in front of it, so it's not, as Mark said, not very obvious, but just in case we made sure that the message gets across, and so we came up with the facade treatment as being little T's that look more like an interwoven pattern. And those panels, they are made of glass reinforced concrete called JRC. And that's been a really fascinating collaboration with the construction company who did those panels. In Japan, obviously, well, it's not obvious really, but the construction techniques and the quality of construction materials is really quite something. And that's probably why we enjoy working in Japan so much, because there is a precision, and then there is a love of the detail and quality in execution that is second to none, I think.
The producer of the material is Asahi Bengo. So have you discussed directly with them or through the
No, we dealt directly with them in their factory,
Yes.
And it was a very difficult time because we just had the earthquake of the
Big Tohoku
Big Tohoku earthquake happened at that time, which was very close to their factory. So there were lots of challenges when we made the project. But it is a really beautiful material.
So may I ask about Asahi Building Wall?
So Asahi Building Wall were the manufacturers for the glass reinforced concrete panels. They're really beautiful, and we were really impressed by the technology and the craftsmanship that is used to make the wall. Asahi Building Wall, you know, we first met them after they worked with Toyota, building the Matsumoto theatre, and so we'd like to sort of challenge them with a new project, and it was very interesting. The very panels are very large, and they could be kept lifted into place, and they hide a multitude of things, whether it's the air conditioners behind them or the piping or the vents. So there's a really clear, not so much, but that was the idea. Yeah. How many T's are there? Do you remember?
Oh no, I don't remember how many T's.
We
there
did
are.
know, but it was like 27,000. It was like it was a lot of T's. But a lot of T's. How many panels? I 500 or 600 panels. That must be. Yeah.
Yes, and each panel is about
2 meter by 4 meter panel.
yes, and they were lifted in place by a crane, and so the joints. Obviously, there are joints between the panels, but you hardly see them because they have a silicone gasket in between.
Yeah, a foam gasket, because
Yes.
the panels have to rack in an earthquake. Yeah, so it was quite. That's actually what devised the gap, was the big panels and the amount of racking we had to gave us the actual joint size. So,
Yeah.
but it was really beautiful, and
Yes,
they look
and-
really fantastic still
yes.
today. Yeah.
And obviously we made a couple of prototypes, and then the color of the panels was quite important. We didn't want it to be painted white, but we also didn't want it concrete. We wanted this really soft looking concrete with a white stain. And but obviously they had also to be sealed for weather reasons. And so they made quite a few samples in the factory with different people painting it. Everybody took one panel, and so we looked at the panels, and there was one that we quite liked out of the variety of, I think maybe it was 3 or 4 panels. And so we said we want this kind of quality, but in order, it's a craft, and everybody paints in a different way, with different vigor, putting different amount of paint on it, and so we kind of specified that very person, and so he was all very proud coming to site and painting all the panels. It was his job to paint all the panels.
So the concept developed very quickly, probably during the briefing
Yes.
for the competition. But we realised that we could complete the project when we won the competition. What was quite amazing was that basically the competition scheme we designed was really built. There was no time to redevelop the project. It was a very short, 20 months from competition win to open. So it's a very compressed timeline. So the client was looking for a project that he could build. So it was quite an intense time.
But also the client himself had a vision of what he wanted, and so there were quite a few brainstorming sessions which we had together with the client, and where he came up with the concept of wanting to address target premier age people being
Over 50, yeah.
over 50, and so what would those people like to have? And it was decided that from an interior point of view, it should have a familiar and warm and welcoming atmosphere.
Human scale was important.
A human scale was very important.
And home.
And homeliness, to feel at home, because in this time and age of internet, what actually gets you outside. It should be just as comfortable as staying at home.
And it was also a very brave moment to build a bookstore when the iPad had just arrived. The iPad had just come out 7 years ago, and the client wanted to build a bookstore, and we thought, it's a little bit crazy, huh? You know? So, but he was absolutely right, and I think books are coming back really strongly now. And also, I think the big important point is that Amazon had arrived. People are buying things online and actually not going to physical stores. But it's really clear that online it's very difficult to browse. If you know what you want, you can buy a book instantly, and it comes the next day or the same day. But if you don't know what you want and you're trying to buy a gift or you're trying to discover something yourself, the internet is very poor for browsing. So the best thing is that you need to go to these stores which are experiential and help you browse. The browsing experience is fantastic in T-site, and that's a new type of retail. I think one of the great things about T-site is the way that it does fit into DAIKANYAMA. It has no sort of front or back, the whole development. You can sort of seamlessly seep into the building. And it's kind of magic how the books arrive, because you never see a book truck. You don't know where the back end, there's no front or back really. It's like you can approach the building from any direction. And I think that's why it sits so comfortably in DAIKANYAMA. But
also it had a lot of existing trees, which and we added much more greenery to it. Landscape-wise, it was always the client's vision that he wanted this place to be in a garden bookstore,
in the woods almost.
Yeah, in the woods. Yes. So it was very important to have a lot of greenery around, and that was very much valued. That we kept to a lot.
I think one of the biggest innovations in the bookstore is our idea of magazine street. So, although the client really wanted one big building due to the planning regulations, the three main buildings on the main street are divided into 3 buildings. And we've linked them together with what we call magazine street that runs all the way through. So when you find the books, when you find the magazines on cooking, that's where the cooking books are. And next to the cooking books, there may be some cooking utensils. So it's a very clear navigation system that we devised for the books. So as you go down Magazine Street, you find the magazines on design books, magazines on cars, car books. So this very simple thing. And there are only 12, the client only has 12 lifestyle themes, so cooking, travel, design, photography, fashion, and anything else he doesn't. Cars, anything else he doesn't really care about. Those are these lifestyle things that drive the project.
But again, remember, he was targeting premier age people, so it was not important to have the whole lineup from A to Z, but rather, your premier age people have already developed their hobby. They know exactly what they want. They want the sort of, what's next, what's up there, rather than the very beginning. So that's where he focused on with the books.
And I think it's one of the key things or new things about the store is you really see it as an oasis, somewhere you can go for a morning or the afternoon or the whole day, and you're not forced to shop. You can have a cup of coffee, you can relax. It's not, if you go into a big mega city, you're either traveling or you're shopping or you're eating, and you're forced into these things. And here it's a much more of a homely experience where you can go and actually spend the day there, and that may not seem to be a good business model, but I think people do actually end up spending quite a lot of money there and parking their car for a long time.